Debt will collapse any nation, big or small. Today we are going to discuss how Greece has missed the IMF payment that we've all been waiting for. And we will also discuss how Puerto Rico is next. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. We're going to start with this right here. The head of the Eurogroup of finance ministers said late Tuesday night that Greece was effectively in default and could face even tougher conditions for a new aid package. This is huge news right here coming out of the New York Times. I think the fact of the matter is that Greece is in default or will be in default tomorrow morning on the IMF and also, I believe, on a loan to their own central bank. But they will be in default, and I don't think I can alter that in the short term. This essentially means that they have claimed bankruptcy to their creditors, in this case the IMF. They have many more payments to make to other institutions or funds or what have you. This just happens to be the IMF, this one here that we know specifically they could never pay back. I've talked about this many times before as we have been leading up to this day right now, and we are here, and they did in fact have this missing of the payment. We're going to move on to this out of the AP. Greece slipped deeper into the financial abyss after the bailout program it has relied on for 5 years expired at midnight, and the country failed to repay a loan to the IMF. We're looking at about $1.8 billion worth here. Greece made a last-ditch effort to extend its bailout. Eurozone finance ministers decided in a teleconference late Tuesday that there was no way they could reach a deal before the deadline. And that was definitely expected to happen. They didn't have the money. They said specifically, we don't have the money to pay this back. And here we are at this time. What they're going to do with all of that, I'm not too sure. But you know specifically that they are going to go ahead with negotiations. I'll get into that in just a moment. They also said here, the Dutch finance minister, it will be crazy to extend the program. They don't want that to happen. They simply want this to be dealt with immediately because it just keeps going on and on. You've heard me covering it here. You've seen it in the news for yourself. This is out of USA Today. Standing in the way of a new deal from the IMF and other creditors is Sunday's Greek referendum on whether to accept the terms that would come with a new aid package, which includes tax increases and spending cutbacks after years of recession. There is some dispute over whether such a referendum could be cancelled, with some Greek lawmakers arguing that the vote is now set in stone. So we have this referendum that's coming up, and obviously people are wondering exactly what's going to happen with all of this. Will they vote yes? Will they vote no? The Prime Minister is asking for everyone to vote no in order to basically have them continue on what they're doing. We'll have to see where that all goes. If they do agree to these cutbacks, it is definitely going to hurt the people of Greece, and this is going to set the precedent for future cutbacks for additional austerity. But at the same time, they simply owe so much money. What they're going to do here, I really don't know at this point. Let's look at this from my book where I talked about the situation that's happening in Greece, and specifically the governments have decided that the best thing to do is to kick the can down the road over and over again, a cycle that has repeated in different countries throughout history. In 2011, repackaging the debt of Greece and others with a date further into the future is their solution. You don't need to be an economist to understand that pushing debt further into the future isn't going to solve the problem. It only delays the inevitable. I've said this many times before. We can see how this is just every time this is what they do. They take the debt, they repackage it up. Oftentimes, they sell it off to investors as a AAA rating in many cases here. This doesn't work. We know that specifically, but that's what they do anyway, and that's all you ever see from this right here. I'm going to move on to this. We're looking at Puerto Rico right now, basically saying that their financial future hung in limbo Tuesday as economists and officials warned that the U.S. territory could head down Greece's path if not allowed to declare bankruptcy as it struggles with a $72 billion public debt. That's huge for a nation as small as Puerto Rico. And basically what we're looking at here is the same situation as with Greece. They owe money, they can't pay it back, they have to begin looking for additional money, different funds. Either they want a debt jubilee, they want a pardon from all of this debt, the money that they owe, or they're going to need to be bailed out by some institution or a different nation or what have you. They are in big trouble. And there's more in this article here. Basically, they have hundreds of millions of dollars that they need to come up with immediately, and they're not able to do that. That is quite clear. Less than 24 hours later, they basically proposed a plan to seek the restructuring of the island's debt, suggesting that the island is virtually insolvent. A long-awaited report compiled by a former IMF staffer brought the Puerto Rican debt crisis back into the spotlight. I have covered Puerto Rico before. I've actually had a couple of the subscribers ask for me to cover it here, so here we go. Basically, they have the exact same situation that's going on in Greece. Of course, there's different really specifics. However, all nations have found themselves in the same situation. I'm going to leave that just for a moment before I get into this in more detail. U.S. fund manager, basically the largest holder of the Puerto Rico debt among municipal bond funds, warned that the island it stands ready to defend the terms of the bond it holds a day after the governor said he wanted to restructure debt and postpone bond payments. Basically what they want to do is, let's make a deal. Let's, I owe you $72 billion. Well, how does 10 sound, or how does 0 sound? And that's really what's happening here. They're not going to get away with it like that. Yes, sometimes they are able to pay less than what they owe and they wipe the debt clean because it's all fictional anyway. But oftentimes, really, they use this as a means of going into the country and stealing the assets. Oh, you owe such and such money. Well, instead, we will be able to put an oil field in your territory, or we'll set up a mine, or what have you. And this is the way that they slowly gobble up real assets. And then, of course, it's not you and I that get the profit from it, despite the fact that that would be bad in the first place. But it is really a means for big corporations to profit. Let's look at this, a little bit of humor here. I always like to bring in some comedy whenever I can. 15 weeks. Treasury says the debt has been frozen at $18 trillion. 15 weeks straight where not a penny has gone up or down. Is there a little glitch there? Do we need to tap on the screen in order to get it to continue to move? Well, this is what is real, is that we have a system built upon debt that shows us that not a single penny has been added to the debt or even taken away. It is consistently $18 trillion and change, and that will never move according to the Treasury system here. It is comical to me to see this. The debt is probably way higher than what we're being told. We know that we're not even including the unfunded liabilities. So you look at a nation like Greece, then you look at Puerto Rico, and we know that all nations are finding themselves in the same situation, the same predicament. The only reason why we're covering Greece primarily here is because they're perhaps the first domino to fall. Missing the IMF payment is technically a default. Whether, what they're going to do with all of this, I'm not sure, but it's technically a default. So the domino has begun to tip over, leading into the next domino, which leads into the next and the next. This is how it's worked historically. There's no need to believe any different. Let's look at this right here, which is, it's quite sad. We're looking at this Hillary Clinton's YouTube channel, and they're talking about the whole healthcare, Obamacare here, how it's important for people to have their quote-unquote free healthcare. I'm not even getting into the topic of this video or going to show you or anything. What I want to just note from this, if you haven't watched it already, basically this individual here is touched by Hillary Clinton physically, and she begins to cry. She can't control herself, just pouring tears. And this is what really tells me something. It's just one incident here, and I understand why this individual was bursting into tears, but it really shows you what people have their faith in their government and the government structure as a whole. They believe that the government will be able to provide them with everything that they need, when in fact we should be taking away all of the powers of the government and bringing it back to the people. I don't believe that they're able to solve all of our problems, but we continue to give up power and our liberty and our freedoms to them in order for them to fix the problems that are caused by them and really the corporations which have taken over the place of the government. Their alumni trade back and forth. It's the revolving door. You know what I'm talking about here. And this is exactly what goes on every single time. It's a complete joke, and I'm sick and tired of it. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I also want to note that in the previous video I asked for your comments, and I really do appreciate all of those. Trying to get back to all of the comments, all the kind words that I'm continuously receiving here. There are so many new subscribers being added every day. Hello to every single one of you. I think we're, if I'm not mistaken, we're closing in on 23,000 soon. So this is really growing exponentially at this point. And I'm really, really glad that people are excited for the truth. They're tired of all the propaganda and the media. It's actually pretty sad what we see out there. But, this is a sign for liberty, and that really, really makes me happy.